are back, Dr. Anetta and Simply Jerica. We are back with part two of valuing your vows. So we are still talking about to have and to hold. Last week we talked about what that meant, and this week we want to talk about how we can prepare to have and to hold from this day forward. So last week we talked about getting married, taking marriage vows all together is serious business. And when we say serious business, that makes me think of the scripture in the Bible. I think it's in Luke where it talks about building a house without even thinking about how, or a building without thinking about or calculating how much that building will cost. I think that that's the way that we should approach marriage. Yeah, I'm not taking it out of context, even though that was talking about discipleship and Jesus explaining how much, it goes into being a disciple. We also have to take into consideration how much goes into being in a marriage, both as husband as well as wives. So today we want to just piggyback off of it being really, really serious when we're taking vows with each other in these unions. So today I brought back Jerica. I wanted her to help us learn or teach us how we can better prepare for marriage and better prepare to have and to hold someone else from this day forward. So we're going to talk about some do's and maybe we might throw in some don'ts. What you think, Erica?
If the conversation goes into some don'ts, let's just see how it goes.
Okay, we'll see. We'll see. All right. So I know that the last episode, Jerica mentioned that she got some excellent advice from her grandfather. And if you haven't watched that episode, I encourage you to go back and watch it because her grandpa is pretty wise. And then we also talked about, was there anything that helped us to prepare for our commitments as wives? And for me, I said that I don't really think that I got any advice specifically from any specific individual, but I do know that I am an observant person. So I did observe marriages all around me all the time. So today, that's what we kind of want to talk about in the preparation for to have and to hold from this day forward. So if I think about me observing marriages and some do's that I would encourage other future brides, one of the things, Jerica, that I think about is not thinking that you don't have someone that is able to share advice with you. Like I said
Mhm.
last episode, because honestly, when I thought about it, I was like, all of the marriages that I was able to observe was actually speaking to me, whether I was listening or not. So I
Mhm.
think that understanding and not misunderstanding those in close proximity to you and their marriages are speaking to you. And one thing about it, ladies, I will say, Jerica, and you may be able to agree with me on this, whatever your intuition is telling you, it usually is right, and believe what you see. So if someone is showing you a healthy marriage, if they're showing you what it looks like to have and to hold from this day forward, I think that that is someone that not you can pattern your marriage after, but those are people that you could possibly ask them to either mentor you and your spouse or just be what Jerica talked about last week. Maybe they can be a silliness filter for you when it's something that you think that may not come off right, that you may want to share with your spouse, or if you want them to just say, hey, no, I think you should look at that differently. So that would be one of my first do's when entering a union, a covenant, a marriage, is to observe what's around you, observe those marriages around you. And is there someone that can mentor you, even if they're not mentoring you on a daily basis or verbally? Is their marriage as a whole speaking to you? Do you have anything to say about that, Jericho, or do you have your own do at this moment?
I have a few do's. You want one or do you want all of them?
Let's do one at a time.
Okay, so the first one, I would say it does coincide with what you just said. And my first one was to seek wise counsel. You brought out a good point because we can seek that wise counsel in the form of a person that's speaking to us, or it can be in the form of that nonverbal language that we experience, which is what you were sharing. So the first thing, my first do is to seek wise counsel.
All right, so ladies, you hear it. You have two. Well, yeah, two for seeking wise counsel. And again, don't not listen to what you are shown, what you are observing. It will tell you a story if you watch it long enough. Now, if you watch something, a few minutes, a few hours, a few days, a few weeks, and you're like, oh, it looks like marriage goals. No, you have to watch it longer than a few weeks, a few months. Everybody just don't become marriage goals after such a short time period. And I also want to say sometimes people don't recognize dysfunction and they will stay in dysfunction for long periods of time. So you can't just observe a marriage and say, wow, they've been married for 50 years. I can tell you I've observed some 50-year marriages that are miserable. And you just want to make sure you are attentive, that you are paying attention to what it is that you are observing, assessing, just paying attention. All right. Another do for me would be, what are your values? As a woman, I feel like it is important for us to know our values first, even before we say I do, even while we're dating, they can tell us, our guys can tell us, what it is they like about us, but we got to know what it is that we're bringing to the table. And I think that if you don't, that will allow some, sometimes in your marriage, it will be a place where when you're not solid in who you are, you're relying on your partner to constantly remind you of who you are when you have to come into that marriage and be solid. So I say your do would be to know who you are, know your values, know your standards. Okay. What do you think, Jerica?
My second do is a little bit different.
Okay.
What you stated, that's very important in marriage. You have to know who you are so you won't get lost in it. My second do is to have an outline plan, but be prepared to be flexible. What I mean by that is, no, marriage is not a business. However, you are going into a union with another person. So you do need to have an outline plan. Does what you see for the future for the next 2, 3, 5 years coincide with what he is looking for within the next 2, 3, 5 years? But the last part of that, be prepared to be flexible, because you should know, even just because it's outlined, that's not always the way it's going to go.
Mhm.
But when you have that foundation and you both know where your plans are and where you want to take this marriage, it's a little bit easier, or I should say more manageable, to maneuver when those unexpecteds happen. I'll
Mhm.
share this. We said on last episode, I've been married now 15 years, which is, in my opinion, an accomplishment.
Mhm.
So dysfunction started, not dysfunction, the unexpected. The unexpected happened a few months after our second wedding anniversary. Most people, after 2 years, you're still in that new phase, not honeymoon, but it's still new. You
No.
don't expect to get something that's major that early on within your marriage.
Mhm.
So you have to be prepared for the unexpected. But because we had that foundation and we knew where we wanted to take the marriage and that we were in this for the long haul from this day forward, it helped us maneuver that situation.
That's good. That's really good. The plans. So that goes back to starting off, excuse me, the scripture that we were talking about in Luke about being able to make plans and calculate the cost of
Mm-hmm.
something that you're building. And as you said, even though we're not looking at it as a business per se, but you have to be able to calculate the cost. And I will say, it's easier getting in than it is to get out, right? We lose a lot trying to get out of a
That's true.
covenant, a vow, if we don't take in consideration the cost of this thing. So when you said the plans, we need to make sure that our plans align with one another.
Hmm.
Then the kicker, you said the flexibility, because
Yes.
all the time they won't align. We won't be, neck and neck. But am I willing to be flexible enough? Do I see myself being flexible with an individual? I don't even know about using the word flexible. This is something that, my husband and I will say a lot. We'll say, well, it's somebody you'll do it for, right? So so when we watch different movies on TV, or if we
Uh-huh.
discuss in different relationships, we all know if somebody isn't being willing in the marriage, they're unwilling. We know that, there is a person that you're going to be willing to be flexible for. And so you need to take those are definitely keys or gems taken into our marriages before, during, engagement, or if you're still in the dating phase, or if you just are single and you think about getting married one day. And what is it? How should I prepare? That planning phase is definitely important. Can you be flexible even if those plans don't necessarily align with one another?
Agreed. Because when you think about to having to hold from this day forward, the future won't look like this day. You have to be able to change and be flexible and be adaptable to whatever comes, because you don't know what's coming down the line. But are you willing to stand beside from this day forward with this person, with
Mhm.
whatever comes your way along the way?
Right. And you keep repeating that word, willing, willing.
Willing.
And she said flexible. So those
Hmm.
are synonymous, right? So, yes, preparing means, am I willing? Asking yourself hard questions, like she said, and we both said in the first episode, there are unexpected circumstances that will happen. We can promise you that. But are you willing to stick it out from this day forward with the person that you're partnered with right now? Do you think that you all will be able to stand the test of time? Because once again, it's serious business and it's forever, ever.
Ever, ever,
All
ever, ever.
right. Okay, so I'm just, thinking about what other dues do I think is really, really important. Jerica, you can jump in anytime as I'm thinking.
Well,
Um,
I have another one. This is my third one. And it's one I can say some people like to talk about, and then some like, no, that's not important, but it also destroys marriages.
mm,
Do have an open, honest dialogue about finances,
all right, I agree.
because you need to know where both of you stand going into it. Now, some people go into a marriage and they treat it like a business. I won't enter this union with you unless you have a certain number, and then this is what we're looking for going forward. If that's how you choose to go into it, I can only share my opinion. We knew where we were financially going into it, and we knew what we had planned to build towards. That goes back to number two, having an outline plan, but being prepared to be flexible. So we were always open about that. And we were open about the responsibilities that will be held within the household. Speaking about finances, and we were able to be flexible as the years went on, as each individual circumstance changed. If you don't have those conversations in advance, when you hit those moments, that calls for a lot of discussion. I'll just put it that way. When
Mhm.
you hit those moments, how will you handle them if you've never had those financial conversations? How will you handle if one feels inferior to the other because their income is more than theirs? How will you handle if you have a two income household, all of a sudden you become a one income household? How will you prepare and handle if you go from a one or two income household to nothing coming in? And
Mm,
I can say that because it has happened over the course of these 15 years. But because we went into this with a plan and we worked together, we had a portion where we could sustain because no one expects that to happen, but it did. So, conversing and having that honest dialogue about finances is my number three.
woo, that's good. That's a lot. That's a lot because when you were saying the conversations that we need to make sure we're having, and again, remember, we're talking about how to prepare to have and to hold before you actually say, I
To
do.
having to hold from
Yeah,
this day forward.
right,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. And those conversations are very, very, very important. It makes me think about the first episode we were talking about explanations. I am someone who does enjoy having conversations about planning what we're going to do in the future. I want to know what it is that he likes, what it is that he doesn't like. But I'm a balanced person, honestly. I want you to know what I don't like because I don't want you wasting time. I don't want you wasting energy. And I also want you to know what I do like. So those conversations are definitely important, as you said, for finances. Like, what if something comes up an emergency where, one person loses their job or both persons may lose their job? Whatever the case, how would we navigate that situation? So being ready and prepared to have conversations often is something that is so important. And I think a lot of studies will say that communication is definitely key to the
Mm-hmm.
successfulness of a marriage. But even before marriage, we're trying to tell you how important it is, even as you're dating your significant other. Start talking as much as possible because I don't know. Sometimes I feel like men, are they, Jerica, do they talk as much as we do? And I feel like you and I, we don't even talk a lot, but men, I don't
Do
think.
they talk to us as much as we do, or do they talk to someone else as much as we
That's
do?
the question.
Because you have to distinguish the two. This is what we have discussed. And when I say we, it's my small circle. With us that got married early and with us that got married a little later. From our shared experiences, if that individual has an intention to go into those vows to have and to hold from this day forward, he starts bringing up those conversations early. But a lot of times, and this is written nowhere, this is nobody's law, this is just what has been experienced amongst those in the group. Those that got married later, the individuals they did not stay with, those financial conversations, one, either never came up, or two, when she brought it up, he was resistant to it.
Mhm.
So when there are intentions there, I feel like they bring it up. That was my experience, and that was the experience of a few others who have been married as long as I have as well.
You know what? I also think what would make conversations about finances easier is if you are intentional about those conversations before you have any of those emergencies that could occur when you're married, the loss of a job, or, you know, kids and not expecting, the prices of inflation and no diapers and, all of what we're experiencing now, gas prices going up and all of that. If you didn't calculate that into your building, I
Mm-hmm.
imagine how that would cause some tension in the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
But as we are talking about today, talking about all of that right now, if I had somebody to tell me, hey, you need to sit down and think about all of the likely, emergencies that could happen, or not just all of the likely emergencies, because I'm not trying to create some hypochondriacs. That's not what I'm.
Mm-hmm.
But
Exactly.
say we need to think about what if this an emergency happens? How are we going to maneuver or handle those situations? So conversations are definitely important, and you're saying specifically conversations about finances. Um,
Yes.
yes, that's very important. But sometimes I feel like we get a bad rap as women for what, talking too much, wanting to know too much.
Uh, I don't know. It's I think it's how you approach the conversation. Never say, "Can I talk to you when you get home?" That's a setup for. I may be a little late because I don't know what this is. But in all seriousness, I
Yeah.
think is where the context of the conversation goes.
Mhm.
Communication is big. And when you're thinking about the do's before you go into the covenant and saying, I do, you have to think, is this someone I can communicate with? Yes, we can go overboard sometimes and we can drag it out and go on and on and on. I think by nature, women speak more than men. However, when you have someone that knows who you are, they know that part of you. And also, as time goes on, you learn how to deal with your significant other. Is this someone that I can speak to and just continue to drag it out? Or do we need to sit down here, have this conversation, come up with a decision, and I just need to be willing to let it go from
Mm-hmm.
there?
True. That's so true. Because the Bible speaks about men or husbands dealing with your wives with knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
You know how I'm wired, and I would understand or think that you would understand the reason why I need those explanations. The reason
Exactly.
you need whatever it is you need.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I totally agree. So that last do, even though we talked a lot, but that last do, you want to make sure you are having lots and lots of conversation, and specifically conversations about finances. But as a whole, I would say conversations, period, because we know that communication is key.
It
And we
is.
sure we're having conversations about, again, what is it that you want? What is it that you require in this relationship? Because sometimes if we know ahead of time what it is that someone requires, or you are just in a phase of engagement or in a phase of dating, and they may want something totally different when they put the ring on your finger, and when y'all exchange rings, and you like, oh, I didn't know you wanted me to do that every day, or I didn't know you wanted, the food cooked like this, or you didn't want leftovers, or whatever it is. So yes, the conversations we need to make sure we keep them coming, keep them coming.
Let me piggyback on that really quick. Back to number two with the outline plan. One thing I feel like needs to be brought out, and you just said it, also, you both need to know what you won't do, what you will not accept, because you know what you want, but you need to know what you won't accept. Those expectations need to be outlined and they need to be put out in the open. Funny story. You brought up leftovers. I knew in advance that I'm a cooker by nature. I enjoy it. And I
Mhm.
knew in advance I was going into a covenant with someone who did not like leftovers.
Mhm.
But that's something I was willing to
I like
accept.
leftovers.
I do too. He does not. So, but for us, that wasn't a problem with me.
Mhm.
But in this example, if that's a problem for you, that should be discussed before you go into that marriage. So,
Mhm.
those not just outlining what you do want, but also outlining those absolute no's.
Amen. Amen to that. Okay, so remember, Faith to Feet family. My mission is to help women pursue greatness without compromising their values, their vision, and their voice. So when Jerica just said you need to explain or you need to articulate what it is that you don't like or you don't want, that is going to help you execute, not compromising your values, your vision, or your voice, not just being able to share the things that we do like or the things that we will accept, right? There are some things that we're like, it's okay, I'm not even going to mention it. But we do need to say what it is that we don't like. And yeah, I'm pretty sure my husband knows what I don't like.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah, he probably knew what I didn't like before he knew what I did like. Because it's so important to not rub each other the wrong way. And I
You're
think
right.
when you enter into even friendships, like I have some new budding friendships right now, and it's like I observe them to see, man, what does she seem like she doesn't like when we go out to eat? how does she, what type of food does it, even though we may have those discussions, here and there, but I observe my friends to see, do they talk a lot, or do they like for you to talk a lot, or, I observe people. So that's what we're talking about with the preparation for to have and to hold from this day forward. Do a lot of observing. Okay, so I was thinking about another do, and you when you mentioned about what we don't like, be able to communicate that. Also, you want your spouse to be able to communicate to you in the language that you understand. I think this is
Yes.
so important
Yes.
because they can be saying something to you and you think that you are understanding what they're saying. And it's like the Charlie Brown character, want.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that going into a marriage, you need to understand that when we have learned languages in high school or in college, really you get the full experience of learning a new language when you just immerse yourself in like the culture of that thing. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that entering into a marriage, you need to look at it like I have to learn that language, and not only learn that language, immerse myself in what it is that makes that person tick. And then you will be able to say, girl, I won't be able to do that forever, ever. Like, and
Right.
be honest, because that's one of our values over here at Faith to Feet.
Mm-hmm.
Your values as Simply Jerica,
Absolutely.
honesty. Like, be honest. We can say, girl, I will not be able to make new meals every single day because this person don't like leftovers. And I will say, like, I'm not the cooker. I'm the baker. And I
Mm-hmm.
will tell everybody, Corey makes the nutritional food. I make the food that makes you happy.
That's a good way to put it.
So we'll always be strong and we'll always be happy. So we got our balance right there.
Exactly. You have to know those things that make that person happy. And you have to know those things that, like you brought out, make them tick. Because we want to focus on what makes that person happy.
Yes.
And a lot of those languages, in my opinion, is nonverbal. We spoke about men not talking as much as women. They don't verbally speak as much as women, but they speak in their own ways. And
Mhm.
I know, being 15 years in, there are a lot of nonverbal languages I picked up along the way, being in a household with this person all the time, morning, afternoon, and night. And I don't know about everybody else. There are a lot of things I picked up in 2020 when we were in lockdown and we had already been married 13 years. So, because you were together all the time with absolutely no break. I would say in that preparation phase, pay attention to those nonverbal languages as well, because they speak volumes to your significant other, because you were able to not just pick up on it, but feed into it. And that goes back to last week, that holding part. It makes them feel safe.
Makes them feel safe. That's really good.
Mm-hmm.
That's really good because sometimes women don't know that men want to feel safe. We only
Mm-hmm.
know that we want to be protected, right?
Mm-hmm.
Simply Jerica, like, look, we need to be getting ourselves together with Simply Jerica teaching us how to manage our mental health because she already gave us one essential. All of us want to feel safe, but we as women, I think we think that we're the only ones that want to feel safe, and because men are our protectors, that they don't have that same need. And yes, that's so important. That was really key. That was really key. All right, so I think I have one more.
Okay.
Maybe two. How many more do you got?
I only had three, so my three are out.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So again, since we don't compromise on our values, our vision, or our voice, I would say in order to prepare to have and to hold from this day forward, you need someone who is going to marry you who values wisdom over being right. And I feel like
Mm.
a difference. Like being right is like being, something that's minor, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I want wisdom to govern or wisdom to navigate my marriage, that's something that's going to win the battle always. It's like we don't want the little fights. We want to win the battle. And that is when you are having enough conversations with your significant other and you see how they're making decisions, and it's usually based on if they're trying to be right about a situation or if they're using wisdom to navigate situations. And I think that being right is something that has stops to it. Like, okay, I was right in that situation, I was right about that. But wisdom is something that flows, and that's
Mm-hmm.
what I want for my marriage, and I hope that's what you would want in your marriage. You want a flowing in your marriage, right? We don't want, okay, we stuck here for the next 6 months because I don't agree with you about this and you don't agree with me about that. But if we both share the importance or the value in being wise, and we know where wisdom comes from at Faith Defeat, right? Wisdom
Mm-hmm.
comes from God. And we know if we're spending time with him, he's teaching us, we're allowing him to teach us. We can get that wisdom that will allow us to both flow in a harmonious way in our relationship. Because no one likes that stoppy. We know I can say in my marriage, there have been times where I'm like, it's straight, but it's a rough patch. But if we were using wisdom in those situations or circumstances, we could have probably flowed a little bit better if we were using that wisdom versus, oh, I want to be right about this moment or this situation. So to have and to hold, it does require both you and your significant other wanting to use wisdom versus being right about situations.
Because being right, I agree, it's like keeping score.
Mm,
And when you keep score, it's like, I'm one up on you, what you got?
right, right,
That causes conflict.
right.
And wisdom, as you said, it allows everything to flow. And I think it's important to throw this in as well. If you hit those patches where it's a scuffle between I'm right, you're wrong, and nobody is compromising, there's nothing wrong with that. We've all been there. That comes with growth. And I think we have to go through some of those phases, not our entire marriage, but phases where we get that wisdom and that growth.
Mm,
Because that may be that thing that the two of you have to deal with that no one else has. And you will have to seek the ultimate wise counsel, which is God. And that's when you all will come together and pray about it. And you'll get that wisdom and then you'll move on from there. So if you have hit those patches, don't think there's anything wrong with you.
mhm.
Know that it happens, but be more focused on how do we get past this. We do want to focus on the side of wisdom, not being right.
Right, right, exactly. And those patches are there to make you better, right?
Mm-hmm.
They are there to actually make you say or allow you to be able to say without, knowing that you're lying, that I have a healthy marriage at 25 years, at 75 years, or, whatever the case may be, other than, just knowing that you're miserable. So those patches come to help and to teach us and to bring us into the next level or dimension in our marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know what portion of the vows we'll get to, but I feel like, again, we said that this was a setup. This is like the groundwork. But in marriage, I feel like it's supposed to get sweeter and
And
sweeter.
sweeter and sweeter. I agree. I completely agree. You
Yeah,
sit there 10, 15, 20 years in and you marvel in, wow, we made it through that. And look where we are now because of it. And you appreciate it.
yeah.
So I agree.
Right, because you've told us about the unforeseen or adverse situations that come up in our lives, but those are the very things that God Himself allowed in order
Mm-hmm.
to get you to those next levels that you can
Mm-hmm.
say, man, I look back on that and man, now we're here in the marriage. And then
Mm-hmm.
later on, we'll be looking at, our daughters graduate high school and then graduate college. And then we're like, man, we are so much better for what God helped us to do through wisdom by, helping us guide us through those rough patches. All right. Lastly, I guess when we say to have and to hold from this day forward, if we just look like last episode, I said we both, our significant others and us, we both agree in the relationship that we want to have each other, right? We agree to that. I believe that we need to make sure that we are marrying someone that we understand what amount or how important sex is to them. Because I think that sometimes women and men, and they may have a different idea of what sex means to their partners. And I think that is something, along with finances, is important to communicate early on. So even if the conversation is we're dating or we're engaged and we're not having sex until we get married, and we push towards we're getting married, and how often do you think having sex is healthy for you, and vice versa, or what does healthy sex look like? Because I mean, if we just, that's the elephant in the room, to have it,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think that those conversations are definitely important, because sex to not, and I will say, I believe that sometimes men think that it's not as important to women. It's,
Mm-hmm.
if the goal is to please one another, I think it is always just as important, if not more, if the goal is to please each other. So make sure that you do marry someone that shares your same values and standards as far as sex, how healthy sex should be, what sex looks like, how often you should be having sex. Otherwise, I think that, you could be, that would be a rough patch for you if you don't acknowledge the fact that you are you and they are them.
That's true. And honestly, that's one I can honestly say I have not spent as much time thinking about, but is very important. Thankfully, that part of being intimate, it all has been natural for us. And so I'm very grateful for that. But that was a really good point to point out, because a lot of individuals do have that problem. So
Mhm.
good job bringing up the elephant in the room.
So funny. Yeah, we could go deeper on that elephant, right? Yeah, but we won't. Elephants, no pun intended, simply.
None at all. None at all.
All right, all right. I think that that's the end of what I have to say. What about you, Simply Jericho? Do you have any more that you could share with the Faith to Feet audience?
Just a reminder, as we talk about and close out this episode, for to have and to hold for this day forward, make sure you actually ponder on the things that were shared today. Some of them may work for you, some of them may not. But in order for you to know that, get a journal, write it down, sit down, have those conversations with your significant other as you are in that preparation phase. It will make it so much easier when you hit those different patches along the path, because you talked about it beforehand, as opposed to being the first time you're having that dialogue when you hit it. So go back, rewind, get a journal, and just ponder on it and figure out anything that we shared today that works for you, because it looks different for everyone, but there's something here you can use.
Yes, yes. All right, Faith to Feet family. So, Jerica mentioned pondering, having those conversations. After you've had those conversations, to ponder, not only ponder, write them down. Well, listen, she has a new journal that she has for sale on her website, or is it just Amazon? Is it on your website and Amazon?
It's on Amazon. It's coming to the website soon, but as of now, it's just on Amazon. And the name of the journal is Unveil, and it's a mindset shifting action journal. And the purpose of it is for you to sit down and write yourself a daily letter. The title of the page is Say, Dear Today, because I want you to focus on today only. And there are also check in pages. So if you go to Amazon and you type in Unveil Journal, you will find a journal. It's the Unveil Action Mindset Shifting Journal, and you will see my full name, Jerica Reedus.
All right. Thank you, Simply Jerica, for joining us for the Valuing Your Vows series. You're going to see more of her, and I know you want to because listen to all the wisdom that she is dropping on us. And remember, wisdom is what helps us to flow and not have the breaks in the rough patches and not knowing how to handle those rough patches, right? And that's what she's dropping on us every time we come on together. So we just want to say we appreciate you, Simply Jerica, and I hope you all go out and listen to her podcast, My Life in Ruins. Or is it? As well as after you've had those conversations, you've had enough time to ponder, now you can write your thoughts down in her new journal called Unveil. Where else can we find you, Simply Jerica?
I am on Instagram at Simply Jerica and also on my website at simplyjerica.me.
All right, Faith to Feet family. I hope you learned a lot in this episode of To Have and to Hold from this day forward, part two. You'll see us again for the next upload of the next portion of Valuing Your Vows. All right, peace out.